March 23rd, 2021. San Antonio, Texas. Bill Greehey Arena. Second round of the NCAA Women's Tournament. Iowa versus Kentucky. 5th seed against 4th seed. And in the middle of all of it, a freshman from West Des Moines, Iowa, who was about to introduce herself to the entire country in the most emphatic way imaginable. Before we get into the game, we need to set the scene, because the context around this one makes what happened even more remarkable. This was the first NCAA Women's Tournament held during the COVID pandemic bubble. All games played in San Antonio. No fans allowed in most venues. The whole thing feeling a little bit surreal.
Remember, with the NCAA bubble to prevent the spread of COVID-19, the Wildcats are spending most of their downtime isolating and indoors.
Iowa came in at 20-9, a team that nobody had even given a vote in the preseason top 25. Nobody had them on their radar. Nobody was talking about them heading into March. And nobody, outside of Iowa City, had really heard of Caitlin Clark yet. She was a freshman. She had put up good numbers in the regular season, but this was only her second NCAA tournament game. And the pregame conversation was almost entirely about the All-America showdown between Iowa's Clark and Kentucky's Rhyne Howard, the decorated junior guard who was one of the best players in the country and the unquestioned star of the Wildcats. Howard was the name everyone knew. Clark was the name most people were about to learn. Before the opening tip, Clark walked over to head coach Lisa Bluter and told her something that said everything about who this kid was. She looked around the intimate arena, a small low-lit gym that felt more like a high school court than an NCAA tournament venue, and said, "It's a shooter's gym, coach." Bluter told her to go with it. She did. So let's get into it. Iowa came out and set the tone before Kentucky had any idea what was happening. Gabby Marshall opened the scoring with a jumper. Kate Martin hit a layup. Clark buried a three. And by the time Kentucky finally got on the board, Iowa had already sprinted out to an 11-0 lead that left the Wildcats completely stunned. Kentucky started the game 0 for 8 from the field, 0 for 8, and Clark was already in full command, reading the defense before it even set, making decisions faster than Kentucky could react, and playing with the kind of poise that you simply do not see from freshmen in March. She just kept coming. Another jumper off the Clark, assist to Sinano, a layup from Clark herself, and then Clark stepped back from beyond the arc and buried a three that pushed Iowa out to 18-8, and Kentucky called timeout because they had absolutely no idea how to slow her down. The Wildcats were rotating late, closing out off balance, and getting caught in no man's land every time Clark put the ball on the floor. None of it was working. Clark had already announced herself, and the first quarter wasn't even halfway done. The thing that stood out more than anything in those opening 10 minutes was not just the scoring, it was the complete picture. Clark was rebounding on the defensive end. She was finding Sinano in the post when Kentucky went under screens. She was making the right read every single time. The defense gave her a choice between attacking and dishing. She looked like a 5-year veteran, not a freshman, playing in her second tournament game. By the time the first quarter ended, Iowa led 23-11, and Clark had already scored 14 points. Rhyne Howard, the player everyone had come to see, had been held largely in check by an Iowa defense that was suffocating from the opening tip. The game had a feeling to it early that this was going to be something special. The second quarter was where Clark went from very good to completely legendary. She hit a layup off a Marshall assist to open the quarter, then a Sinano jumper off a Clark pass to push it to 29-13. Then Clark stepped back from 26 feet and buried a three, her fourth of the game at that point, and the Iowa bench was going absolutely wild. She kept going. Another three from Clark to push it to 37-16. Sinano laid it up off another Clark assist. And then, with 3 minutes left in the half, Clark buried another three, her fifth, to push the Iowa lead to 21 points. The broadcast team was running out of superlatives. Kentucky tried a box and one to try to take Clark out of the game, and it didn't matter. They tried playing her off the ball and letting her shoot. She made them pay. They tried physical defense, and she drew fouls. Nothing worked. Nothing was going to work. Clark buried another three off a Warnock assist to push it further, then hit 2 free throws at the buzzer to send Iowa into halftime, leading 49-22, with Clark personally outscoring the entire Kentucky team 24-22 in the first half alone. A freshman, in her second NCAA tournament game, outscored an entire team by herself in one half. Kentucky came out of halftime and made it a little more respectable in the third quarter. Tatiana Wyatt hit a jumper, Rhyne Howard started finding her rhythm, Jasmine Massengill got going. The Wildcats went on a run that trimmed the lead, and for a moment it felt like this might get interesting. Kentucky was being more physical, getting into passing lanes, and forcing Clark into a couple of turnovers that gave the Wildcats some easy transition buckets. Iowa's lead was down to 16 points at one point in the third, and the Kentucky crowd, watching from home, had a brief moment of hope. But Clark shut it down immediately. She grabbed a defensive rebound, pushed the pace herself, and drove for a layup and a free throw to push the lead right back out. Warnock hit a three off a Clark assist. Sinano hit a jumper, and then Clark drove baseline for a layup that pushed Iowa past 60 points and essentially sealed the game. Whenever Kentucky made any kind of run, Clark had the answer. That was the theme of the entire afternoon. Every time you thought maybe the Wildcats were getting back in this, Clark did something that reminded you they were not. Howard was spectacular in the second half for Kentucky and deserves enormous credit. She finished with 28 points and 8 assists and competed until the very last second. Dreuna Edwards added 16 points and gave Iowa some trouble inside. But the gap between the two teams was simply too wide, and the gap between Clark and everyone else on the floor was even wider. Iowa headed into the fourth quarter, leading 70-46, and the result was never in doubt. Clark spent much of the fourth quarter on the bench with the game comfortably in hand, watching her teammates finish what she had started. Monica Sinano added 14 points and 8 rebounds. Kate Martin and McKenna Warnock were rock solid on both ends all game long. Gabby Marshall provided the perfect complementary piece. This was a complete team performance. But make no mistake, every single person in that building and everyone watching at home knew exactly whose performance they had just witnessed. The Hawkeyes won 86-72 and advanced to the Sweet 16 to face top-seeded UConn. 35 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. Shot 12 of 23 from the field, hit 6 threes, outscored an entire Kentucky team in the first half by herself. Did all of that as a freshman in her second NCAA tournament game, in a bubble gym in San Antonio with no fans in the stands. Rhyne Howard, one of the best players in the country that year, finished with 28 points and tried everything she could to get the Wildcats back in it. But Clark was simply operating at a different level. Iowa head coach Lisa Bluter put it simply post-game. Look at our team at the beginning of the year. Nobody even had us receiving votes in the top 25. We just kept believing in ourselves. This was the game. This was the moment. A freshman in a bubble gym in San Antonio, telling her coach it was a shooter's gym, and then going out and shooting better than anyone in the building had ever seen. Alright, that's it for this one. Thanks for tuning in. Let us know what you thought down below in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the episode if you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you in the next one.
I'm going to try to force contested shots from the three-point line, and there is Caitlin Clark knocking down a big one.
Iowa had come ready to play, but Caitlin Clark leading the charge, step back three.